Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a time before stories had neat beginnings and tidy endings, before the gods perched on Olympus, or humans built temples to argue over which one deserved the best sacrifices. You float in the endless stretch of a cosmos without shape, a smear of darkness and potential. There are no stars yet, no moonlight to spill silver on a restless ocean, no mountains clawing skyward. Just an endless yawn of nothingness that feels almost comfortable, like the way you feel staring into the back of your eyelids when you're half asleep. Of course, if you actually were floating there, you probably wouldn't survive. This vacuum is famously not kind to the lungs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love it if you dropped your location and local time in the comments. It always amazes me to see this sleepy little community stretching across continents. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're here, adrift in the world that Greek poets insisted existed before everything. They called it chaos, not in the way your bedroom looks after laundry day, but as an undefined void. Out of this emptiness, slowly, beings seep into existence. Gaia, the earth, stretching flat and wide. Nyx, the night, brushing her cloak across nothingness. And Eros, love itself. Not the diapered archer with candy hearts, but raw attraction. The pull that makes things cling together instead of floating off in their own sulky orbits. Historians still argue whether the Greeks genuinely believed this was a literal creation, myth, or if it was more of a poetic shorthand for something came before us, but we're not sure what. Either way, it worked, because the imagination fills in the gaps, the silence, the first stirrings, the sense of a story cracking its knuckles before beginning. From Gaia, the earth, mountains swell upward, rivers curl and dig valleys, and the sea gathers itself like a great blue bowl. If you tilt your head, you can almost hear those rivers babbling in languages that won't be invented for millennia. This is when Uranus, the sky, stretches himself above her, forming the first celestial dome. Their union is inevitable. Earth and sky were pretty much the power couple of mythic real estate. Together they give birth to the first generation of immense beings, the Titans, who loom over the narrative like that one relative who won't stop giving unasked for advice. At the dinner table, here's a fun quirky tidbit. Some sources claim that Gaia and Uranus also produced beings called the Hecatoncheires giants, with 100 hands each. You try imagining shaking hands with one of those guys. You'd be there all day. Mythologists joke about how these creatures were probably invented, just to make ordinary giants seem manageable. Meanwhile, Eros keeps stirring things up, ensuring beings can't just sit around brooding. They've got to mingle, make children, make drama. It's sort of like the universe's first matchmaking app, only mandatory and involving less swiping. And every new offspring makes the cosmos a little fuller, a little more interesting, even if messy. You might notice how the Greeks loved personifying natural elements, Earth as a mother, sky as a father, night as a shrouded figure. It's partly poetic, partly practical. If your crops depend on rain, it helps to imagine sky as a personality you can coax, flatter, or bribe. Early humans everywhere had this same instinct. The Sumerians spoke of an and Ki, sky and earth, while Egyptians worshipped Nut-Ussing over Geb, her brother Earth. Historians point to these parallels as evidence that people everywhere gazed upward and downward, and thought, these must be more than just dirt and space. But of course, this tidy pantheon doesn't stay peaceful for long. Already, tension brews between Uranus and Gaia. He fears his children, stuffing the monstrous ones deep into the earth so they can't embarrass him. At celestial family gatherings, it's a terrible parenting strategy. Imagine grounding your kids permanently, then acting surprised when they plot revenge. Gaia, smothered by the weight of hidden offspring, begins to brood. Something is bound to snap, and it will, though not quite yet. For now, you just float above this newborn cosmos, watching the first outlines of sky and land and sea come into being, like a painter brushing out the background before deciding on the details. The silence is deceptive. It's the pregnant pause before the shouting match of myth begins. You feel that quiet and realize it's a nice place to rest your thoughts. Letting your breathing slow as the void stretches infinite and calm around you, you float further into this early cosmos, noticing how the titans stretch and yawn like freshly awakened giants. They are the first children of Gaia and Uranus, and they emerge with a kind of awkward grandeur, towering but not yet sure of their place. These aren't the flashy Olympians you'll hear about later. The titans are slower, heavier, rooted in that raw first generation of existence. Their names alone roll like thunder. Oceanus, the endless stream circling the world. Hyperion, the pillar of light. Mnemosyne, memory herself. Each one isn't just a character there, chunks of reality carved into humanoid form. Historians still argue whether these figures were meant to be literal divine beings or symbolic stand-ins for natural phenomena. Were the titans just the Greeks' way of saying the sun exists and so does memory? Or did people in smoky temples truly imagine them stomping around the earth, larger than mountains? No one can be entirely sure, and maybe that uncertainty is part of the charm. Oceanus, for instance, is basically the Mediterranean's big brother, wrapping his arms around the edges of the flat Greek world. Imagine being an ancient sailor, terrified of falling off the edge of the map. You'd want Oceanus watching over you, even if he's a bit grumpy. Then there's Themis, goddess of divine order, who probably sat everyone down like the first cosmic lawyer, and explained why maybe eating your siblings wasn't a sustainable lifestyle choice. And here's a quirky tidbit. The titaness Mnemosyne would later become the mother of the Muses, those divine inspirations who torment poets with midnight ideas. So, technically, every time you've stayed up at 3 a.m. because you suddenly needed to rearrange your furniture or write down epic song lyrics that make no sense in the morning, you're following in titan footsteps. But the titans aren't the only ones crowding Gaia's surface. Alongside them lurk the Cyclops giants with one glaring ice mac in the middle of their foreheads. They're blacksmiths before forges exist, hammering thunderbolts in volcanic caves, sparks lighting up the young night. Then there are the hecaton cheers, those 100-handed, 50-headed monstrosities that even their dad Uranus couldn't stomach. He shoves them down into Gaia's belly like unwanted leftovers. You might wonder, how exactly did Uranus and Gaia manage to have so many kids without hospitals, midwives, or even proper space? The Greeks didn't sweat those details. For them, mythology was less about logistics and more about scale. And scale is what the titans bring. They are immense, slow-moving, with grudges that can last eons. Still, their existence is fragile. You sense the tension growing between father and children. Uranus, stretched out across the sky, grows paranoid. He doesn't like the way his sons glance upward with restless ambition, or the way Gaia whispers encouragement to her brood. The first seeds of rebellion rustle through the cosmos, though for now, the titans are content to lumber around naming rivers and mountains like overexcited toddlers. Naming their stuffed animals. Here's where history sneaks back in. Scholars often note that the idea of a first generation of gods being overthrown by a younger one mirrors how ancient Greek city-states worked. You had kings and then Danube rebellion, exile, and fresh kings. It was practically the Mediterranean pastime. So of course, their myths reflected this endless cycle of overthrow and succession. You can almost hear a Greek bard sigh as he sang, "Here we go again." And while all this cosmic family drama is unfolding, humanity isn't even on the stage yet. You, floating like a drowsy spectator, can't help but feel a little anticipation. After all, the story of Prometheus will matter only when those fragile clay figures appear. But right now, the spotlight belongs to the titans standing tall, filling the empty world with their massive forms. It's a strange comfort, really. You picture them like oversized background actors holding up the scenery, making sure the stage is ready for the main play. The sea keeps circling, the sun begins its endless rising and setting. Memory waits patiently in the wings. The cosmos is no longer empty. It has characters now, big, lumbering, and slightly dysfunctional. You breathe a little slower, letting that vast weight settle around you. A reminder that before humanity's chaos, there was a quieter, slower chaos, painted in titan-sized brush strokes. The tension in the cosmos builds like a thunderstorm, and you can almost taste the metallic tang of anticipation in the air. The Titans roam the world, but it's Cronus, one of the younger sons of Gaia and Uranus, who begins to stir more boldly. He's sharp-eyed, sharper-minded, and carries the dangerous combination of patience and resentment. Imagine the middle child at a family reunion who's quietly noting every unfair rule, every restriction, and plotting how to change the seating chart. Cronus doesn't just grumble, he watches, waits, and calculates. Uranus, the sky, has not been winning any Father of the Year awards. He keeps shoving his less attractive children, like the Cyclops and the 100-handed ones, deep into the womb of Gaia. Picture Earth herself groaning under the weight of too many kids squished inside her crust, like laundry stuffed into an already full hamper. Gaia, tired of carrying the burden, begins to seethe. She's Mother Earth, but even mothers have their limits. Historians still argue whether this story reflects an allegory of agriculture or politics. Was Uranus the oppressive sky holding down fertile Earth? Or was he simply a symbol of rigid power, the kind that eventually provokes rebellion? Either way, the narrative has all the makings of a cosmic soap opera. Overbearing dad, exhausted mom, and children plotting mutiny. Gaia, being resourceful, doesn't just complain, she acts. She fashions a sickle made of flint, jagged and gleaming, a tool both primal and terrifying. She gathers her Titan sons, whispering like a general rallying soldiers. Most of them shrink back, wary of facing their father. But Cronus steps forward, calm, steady. The kind of volunteer who doesn't flinch even when the plan sounds absurd. He agrees to wield the sickle and challenge Uranus himself. Here's a quirky tidbit. The sickle becomes one of the most iconic symbols in Greek myth, later tied to agriculture, time, and harvest. It's kind of funny that a cosmic overthrow could double as the inspiration for that thing you use to cut wheat. The Greeks loved recycling symbols. As Uranus descends to lie with Gaia, Cronus crouches, waiting. You sense his hand tightening on the sickle's handle. There's a hush, the world holding its breath, and then strike. The sky god is cut down, his reign quite literally severed. Cronus doesn't hesitate, doesn't look back. The balance of power shifts in that single, brutal moment. Of course, the details vary depending on which poet you ask. Some soften the story, others lean into the gore, but all agree this is the moment when Uranus' authority crumbles, and Cronus steps up as the new ruler. The Titans rejoice, shaking off centuries of fear, and Gaia exhales for the first time in what feels like ages. And here's the strange, fringe tidbit. Some versions claim that from the drops of Uranus' blood sprang strange beings, giants, furies, and even the goddess Aphrodite, who drifted up from the sea foam. Imagine telling that as a bedtime story. Sweet dreams, kids. Tomorrow we'll talk about how dismemberment led to beauty and love. The Greeks never did subtle. Now Cronus stands tall, holding the sickle like a trophy. He becomes the leader of the Titans, seated on a throne carved out of newly ordered chaos. But with power comes paranoia. If he could overthrow his father, couldn't his children one day do the same? You feel that thought coil in his mind like a snake waiting to strike. Cronus is in charge, yes, but he carries the curse of knowing how fragile power really is for now. Though, he reigns. The Titans, under his guidance, carve order into the world. Rivers flow where they're told, seasons stumble into existence, mountains rise. You drift alongside them, watching this uneasy new age settle like dust after a storm. The sky no longer groans under Uranus' grip. Instead, the world expands, restless and promising. You sense it's only the beginning of endless cycles, one ruler replaced by another, each repeating the same mistakes, each imagining they'll be the exception. Cronus is celebrated, feared, and obeyed, but that shadow of rebellion already clings to him. For the moment, though, the cosmos breathes easier. Even if the air is thick with the scent of change, you let your own breathing slow to match, drifting in that lull before the next inevitable upheaval. You linger in the afterglow of Cronus' triumph, and for a while, the world seemed stable. Cronus wields his sickle and rules with a careful, measured hand. But even in this new age, the gods can't escape the pattern of suspicion and betrayal. You can almost picture Cronus pacing, always glancing over his shoulder, listening for whispers in the shadows. He knows what he did to Uranus, and deep down, he fears the same fate. The universe is a mirror, and he doesn't like what he sees reflected back. Gaia, relieved of Uranus' oppressive weight, watches her son's reign with a mixture of pride and unease. She whispers prophecies, warnings that Cronus should beware his own children. You'd think he'd take that as advice to be a gentler father, maybe host a family picnic. Instead, he decides on the opposite strategy, preemptive paranoia. Whenever Rhea, his sister and queen, gives birth, Cronus swallows the baby whole. No nursery, no lullabies straight to the cosmic equivalent of a pantry shelf. Historians still argue whether this gruesome act symbolized something more abstract, like time devouring all things. After all, Cronus' name echoes chronos, the Greek word for time. It's one of those clever connections scholars love to debate while ignoring that, at face value, Cronus was basically running the worst daycare center in mythology. One by one, Rhea's children vanish: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Each infant disappears down their father's gullet, leaving Rhea grieving and furious. The image is absurd if you linger on it. Cronus with a distended belly, probably burping Olympians. Yet the myth treats it with grim inevitability. Power must be preserved, no matter how ridiculous the method. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some vase paintings from antiquity actually show Cronus mid-gulp, kids half dangling from his mouth like spaghetti. Ancient artists had a dark sense of humor, and you can imagine the awkward conversations at dinner parties. Oh, this? Just a little scene of divine infanticide to brighten up the kitchen. But Rhea isn't powerless. She bides her time, waiting until her 6th pregnancy. When she gives birth to a son on the island of Crete, she finally snaps. Instead of handing him over to Cronus, she bundles a stone in swaddling cloth and presents it like a baby. Cronus, too paranoid to check, gulps it down without hesitation. Honestly, you'd think the crunch would give it away. But gods aren't known for their attention to detail. The real baby Zeus is hidden away in a secret cave on Crete, guarded by nymphs and fed on honey and goat's milk. Rhea sighs with relief, knowing she's finally slipped a thread through the tight weave of fate. This tiny act of maternal rebellion will eventually topple Cronus' reign. You drift above this scene and notice how myth echoes history yet again. Ancient Greeks often saw cycles of tyranny and rebellion in their own city-states. Kings overthrown by citizens, tyrants replaced by newer tyrants. The story of Cronus and Rhea is just that cycle wrapped in divine packaging. No ruler lasts forever. Meanwhile, Cronus struts, convinced his throne is secure, even as his stomach churns with gods in waiting. He doesn't notice the absence of Zeus. He doesn't imagine that one day, that overlooked infant will pry open his jaw and vomit out a new pantheon. For now, Cronus reigns with Rhea beside him, a queen who smiles in public but keeps her secrets close, and you, floating quietly on the edge of this myth, feel the tension simmering. It's the same tension you sense before a storm, the air heavy, your skin prickling. Even though the rain hasn't yet fallen, Cronus may be king, but you know the story is already shifting beneath him, like sand slipping under a careless step. You let your breath fall in sync with that slow rumble of fate, a steady rhythm lulling you forward into what comes next. Zeus grows not in palaces or among thrones, but in secret caves hidden in the rugged heart of Crete. You can almost hear the hush of dripping water echoing off stone, smell the sharp tang of goat milk, and feel the chill of mountain winds curling around the entrance. This is no golden nursery. It's rough, shadowed, but safe. And sometimes safety matters more than comfort. Rhea entrusts the infant Zeus to a band of nymphs who cradle him in their arms and feed him with honey, the sweetest nectar available, thick and golden. For milk, they turn to Amalthea, a divine goat whose patience seems endless. Imagine babysitting a god who will one day throw lightning bolts. Better stock up on snacks. Zeus grows plump and lively, kicking his tiny feet against the woven baskets that serve as his cradle. But raising Zeus is no simple task. To keep Cronus from hearing his cries, the Caretes, armored guardians, perform a rhythmic dance outside the cave. They clash their spears against shields, stomping in time, drowning out the wails of the infant god. It's both practical and a little comical, essentially ancient noise-cancelling headphones, but louder. You picture warriors head-banging, like an early rock band just to keep a baby's cries from, echoing too far. Historians still argue whether these myths about Zeus' upbringing in Crete reflected actual cult practices. Archaeologists have found caves filled with offerings, jars, figurines, even weapons that might have been left by worshippers honoring his childhood refuge. Did real people once creep into torchlit caverns, whispering prayers to the baby god? Or was it all poetic imagination, the kind storytellers wove to explain sacred sites? And here's a quirky tidbit: Amalthea's horn, broken off in some versions when the rambunctious Zeus tugged too hard, became the cornucopia, the horn of plenty that later symbolized endless abundance. So, yes, according to myth, your Thanksgiving centerpiece traces back to a goat who babysat the king of the gods. Zeus grows quickly, as divine children tend to. He learns strength from the nymphs, resilience from the wild mountains, and patience from the endless drip of cave water. Unlike his siblings trapped inside Cronus' belly, Zeus has fresh air, honey, and the open sky glimpsed through cracks in the stone ceiling. He listens to the clash of the Curetes' shields, almost like a lullaby, drifting into sleep under their metallic thunder. Meanwhile, Cronus remains blissfully unaware. He strides through his palace, still swallowing stones disguised as children whenever Rhea hands them over, congratulating himself on his paranoia. You almost feel sorry for him almost. His ignorance is his undoing, and the cosmos seems to savor the irony. You float alongside this hidden childhood, realizing how many myths lean on the trope of the concealed baby who grows up to be a hero. Romulus and Remus with their she-wolf, Moses in his basket on the Nile, even Harry Potter tucked in a cupboard. The Greeks weren't unique in seeing destiny as something you can't stomp out. No matter how hard the tyrant tries, Zeus, though still a child, already radiates that inevitability. You picture him clutching Amalthea's fur, eyes bright, watching sparks of lightning crawl across the night sky outside his cave. He doesn't yet know they'll be his one day, but the universe seems to hum the secret. The cave becomes a cradle not just for Zeus but for the future. Every honey drop he licks, every stomp of the Curetes, every hidden smile from Rhea, all of it builds toward the moment when he'll rise and challenge Cronus. You linger here, in this quiet pause, letting the slow drip of time echo like water in the cave. Your breath mirrors the rhythm, steady, patient, preparing for the storm. Time moves strangely in myth. One moment, Zeus is a squirming infant in a goat's care, and the next, he is a full-grown god, his muscles honed by mountain winds and his mind sharpened by foresight. You stand with him on the rocky slopes of Crete, gazing out over the horizon where storm clouds gather. It is here that Zeus begins to think not just of survival, but of reclaiming what Cronus has stolen. The whispers of Gaia and the murmurs of Rhea reach him in dreams, his brothers and sisters, swallowed alive, still languish inside Cronus' cavernous belly. It isn't death, not exactly, it's more like imprisonment, a muffled existence in the dark. Zeus, their hidden brother, becomes the only hope for release. You imagine how strange it must feel, knowing your siblings are trapped inside your father like marbles in a jar. Historians still argue whether the Titanomachi, the great war between Titans and Olympians, was originally a separate story later tied to Zeus' rise, or if it always belonged to this grand arc. Either way, the stage is set for one of mythology's loudest family feuds. Before the war begins, Zeus arms himself with allies. First, he tricks Cronus into drinking a potion brewed by Metis, the goddess of cunning. The concoction churns Cronus' insides until he retches violently, disgorging the swallowed children. Out tumble Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, dazed but very much alive. Imagine being reborn from your father's stomach fully grown, blinking at the world like, did we miss anything? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions say Cronus also vomited up that swaddled stone Rhea tricked him with. The Greeks actually displayed what they claimed was the stone of Cronus at Delphi, polished and anointed with oil. Pilgrims made offerings to a rock, believing it once fooled the king of the Titans. You almost admire the audacity of that tourist attraction dot with his siblings freed. Zeus rallies them as a new generation of gods, the Olympians. They burn with gratitude and vengeance, ready to topple their paranoid father. But Cronus is no fool. He calls upon his Titan brothers and sisters, summoning a host of towering warriors. The world braces as two generations of divinity prepare to clash. The Titanomachi begins. You feel the ground shudder with each step of the 100-handed ones, whom Zeus rescues from their subterranean prison and recruits as allies. Their sheer force tilts the balance, each one hurling boulders the size of mountains. The Cyclops, too, join the fray, hammering out weapons in volcanic forges. For Zeus, they forge a gift unlike any other, the thunderbolt, jagged and white-hot, a weapon that cracks the sky and burns the air. The battles rage for years 10. According to some poets, lightning lashes across the heavens, mountains crumble, rivers change course. You almost pity the poor mortals who might have been watching from below, trying to farm wheat while the earth convulsed like a drumhead under hammering fists. Zeus, hurling his new thunderbolts, drives the Titans back step by step. Cronus, scythe in hand, resists fiercely, but the old order is crumbling. The Olympians fight not just with weapons but with momentum. They are the future, and the future always finds a way to muscle past the present. Finally, the 100-handed ones unleash a barrage so overwhelming it buries the Titans. Beneath layers of rock, the defeated are dragged, chained, and hurled into Tartarus, a pit deeper than Hades itself. Gates of bronze seal them in, guarded forever by their monstrous jailers. Cronus, their leader, falls silent, his reign ended as utterly as Uranus before him. The world settles, the dust clears, and Zeus stands triumphant. His siblings gather, crowning him king of the cosmos, master of sky and storm. But you can already sense the tension brewing. Victory never ends the story. It only rearranges the pieces. For now, though, you breathe with the calm off to battle, the still air that follows when thunder has finally rolled away. The world exhales after the clash of Titans and Olympians, the dust drifting down like tired confetti after a parade. You drift with it, sensing the silence that comes when the shouting stops, the strange calm that blankets the battlefield after 10 years of thunder and stone hurling. Zeus and his siblings stand at the center of this new cosmos, their skin still hot from lightning and their eyes bright with victory. They are young gods, but already the universe bends to their will. The Titans, bound and groaning, have been dragged to Tartarus. Imagine a pit so deep it would take a bronze anvil 9 days to fall from earth to its bottom. That's the description ancient poets gave. And there, behind adamantine gates, the 100-handed ones keep watch, rattling their chains as if eager to remind the prisoners who now controls the keys. Historians still argue whether this part of the story reflected a real-world shift in Greek society, like younger generations overthrowing older traditions, or if it was simply the poet's flair for drama. Either way, it's clear, the old order is buried, the new one ascends, and yet victory is never neat. Zeus, flush with triumph, divides the world with his brothers. He claims the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the shadowy underworld. The earth itself remains common ground, shared among gods, though you can imagine the squabbling at family dinners. You flooded my temple, you stole my worshippers, you literally kidnapped my daughter. Divine politics never really cool off. Here's a quirky tidbit. The Greeks later pictured Mount Olympus as the god's throne room, but early myths don't always tie them to that mountain. Some scholars suggest Olympus was just a poetic metaphor for wherever the gods felt like hanging out. Eventually, it hardened into a fixed address, probably because worshippers liked knowing where to send their prayers. The Olympians don't just rest on laurels, they reshape the cosmos. Rivers are assigned courses, stars pricked into the heavens, winds tamed into their cardinal directions. The Cyclops, grateful for their freedom, gift Poseidon his trident and Hades a helmet of invisibility. You can almost hear the clatter of divine workshop tools echoing in the background, like the universe's first hardware store buzzing late into the night. Zeus, seated high, surveys his domain with satisfaction. He has thunderbolts at hand, a throne beneath him, and the loyalty of his siblings. But the cosmos doesn't run on power alone. It runs on order. Zeus begins laying down rules, decrees about justice, oaths, and punishment for those who defy him. You could call it the first divine bureaucracy, though thankfully without paperwork. Yet you sense shadows stirring. Cronus may be defeated, but memory lingers. Gaia still broods, remembering how one son overthrew her consort, then another overthrew that son. The cycle is clear, and she knows it hasn't stopped turning. Zeus may celebrate, but the seeds of future rebellion already rustle beneath the surface. Faint as grass pushing through cracks, you hover in that lull, feeling the weight of transition. The cosmos has shifted, the Titans silenced, the Olympians enthroned. Humanity, though, is still absent, waiting in the wings for Prometheus to step forward. For now, the story is still about gods shaping the playground before mortals arrive to fumble with sticks. And fire. The silence after the war is strangely soothing, like the stillness after a summer thunderstorm when the air feels rinsed and clean. You let your breath match the quiet rhythm in and out, as the world rebuilds itself under new rulers. For now, the Olympians glow with fresh power, but you know better than to trust peace in Greek myth. It never lasts for long. The quiet doesn't last. You drift into the realm of shadows where Hades prepares his dominion. Imagine it. A kingdom with no sun, no seasons, no laughter echoing through the hills, just the constant hush of souls arriving like a tide that never ebbs. Hades, the third brother, does not rage about his assignment. He simply takes it, stoic and grave, a landlord of eternity. You picture him descending into the underworld for the first time, helmet of invisibility still humming with power. The path downward winds past yawning chasms, over rivers that whisper with more than water. The Greeks eventually gave these rivers names: Styx, Acheron, Lethe, Phlegethon. Co-cite each with its own flavor of dread. Lethe, for instance, promises forgetfulness, and you can almost hear the sighs of souls plunging into it, shedding memory like old coats. Historians still argue whether early Greeks actually envisioned a moral system in the afterlife, or if Hades' kingdom was simply a neutral warehouse for shades. Later myths bring in Elysium for heroes and Tartarus for villains, but in these older layers, the underworld is mostly grey, dreary, and universal. Think DMV waiting room, but for eternity, though at least no one calls your number wrong. A quirky tidbit: archaeological digs have uncovered tiny gold tablets buried with the dead, inscribed with instructions for navigating the underworld. Like celestial cheat sheets, they often advise the soul to avoid Lethe and seek near Marseille, the pool of memory, so they could keep their identity intact. Imagine clutching your eternal GPS on a golden post-it. Meanwhile, Hades builds his infrastructure. He stations Cerberus, the three-headed dog, at the gate, though you can debate whether that beast appeared this early or later in mythic layering. He assigns Charon to ferry souls across the river, demanding a coin as payment. That's why archaeologists still find obols pressed between the teeth of ancient skeletons. A grim little travel fund. You, watching this unfold, realize how methodical it feels. Zeus commands the sky with thunder, Poseidon churns the seas with trident strokes, and Hades keeps meticulous order over the departed. There's a symmetry to it, like a three-legged stool. Wobbly perhaps, but stable enough to hold the cosmos upright above. The living world thrives under the Olympian's watch. Below, Hades' kingdom hums with the shuffle of countless souls. He does not visit Olympus often, preferring the dim halls of his domain, and you wonder if that distance made him seem so grim in later tales, or if poets just needed a spooky figure to anchor their stories about death. The earth itself becomes the hinge between these worlds. Crops sprout, animals wander, rivers twist through valleys. People have not yet arrived in the myth, but you can feel their absence like an unfilled seat at a dinner table. The gods set the stage carefully, leaving enough space for humanity to stumble in later. Carrying all our messy needs and fragile hopes, some scholars suggest that this structuring of sky, sea, and underworld mirrors how early Greek city-states divided their social roles: kings, warriors, priests, each with power, but each bound by balance. Maybe the myth isn't only cosmic, but political. Whispering about order after chaos. You hover here, hearing the muffled roll of rivers underground, the clash of waves above. and the crackle of lightning somewhere far beyond. It's a symphony of elements tuned to three brothers' wills. The world feels newly mapped, freshly painted, waiting for the next act. And you, lulled by the rhythm of it all, sink deeper into the stillness, aware that beneath every piece in Greek myth lurks another storm. The surface world feels brighter now, as if relieved to have new caretakers. You drift upward from Hades' silent halls to watch the Olympians shape mountains, rivers, and valleys like sculptors fussing over a clay model. Peaks are raised, forests planted, and stars flicked across the sky with an artist's careless hand. You get the sense of a divine blueprint being drafted, though no one asked for planning permits. Zeus establishes Olympus as the god's residence, a shining hall perched above the clouds. You can almost picture the view: mountain goats grazing lower slopes, storms swirling beneath the summit, while the Olympians sip ambrosia and comment on how mortals one day will worship them from far below. Historians still argue whether early Greeks actually believed the gods lived on Mount Olympus, or if it was a symbolic high place later fixed to that specific peak. Either way, the image stuck. Poseidon, restless as always, churns the seas. He sculpts islands out of the foam, shakes the earth with tremors, and roars in storms when he feels neglected. Some scholars suggest that these myths mirror how terrifying the Aegean was for sailor storms. Could rise in minutes, turning a calm voyage into a nightmare. You can imagine fishermen muttering prayers just to keep Poseidon in a good mood. A quirky tidbit: archaeologists once found ancient clay tablets recording sea trade routes and weather omens. While not directly linked to Poseidon, they show how obsessed early people were with patterns of the sea, almost treating them like divine moods. One tablet basically says, if the wind shifts south at dawn, do not sail. The kind of advice modern weather apps would charge you a subscription for. Meanwhile, Hera takes a place beside Zeus, though beside might be an optimistic word. Even now, you feel the simmering tension between them, the endless quarrels, suspicions, and retaliations that will fuel so many myths later. She's queen, yes, but never content with playing second fiddle. The Olympians don't just carve landscapes. They organize the forces behind them. Night and day are personified, dancing across the sky. The seasons click into place, ensuring crops will one day grow. Winds are given names, directions, and personalities. Think of them as the first weather forecast, though without cheerful graphics. It's during this organizing frenzy that Prometheus walks more prominently into view. He is not yet chained to a rock, not yet punished, but already his sharp mind is whirring. You sense him observing carefully, noting how each element slots into the cosmos, storing away knowledge that will one day serve humanity. He is a quiet figure amid thunderous gods, and that makes him all the more interesting. Zeus, satisfied with the structure, now turns to ruling. Oaths are sworn, punishments drafted, and favors granted. Its bureaucracy wrapped in lightning, messy but effective. Historians still argue whether this mythological ordering reflected the rise of Greek law codes. In the archaic period, as cities began formalizing justice, myths often mirror politics, and it's tempting to see Zeus as a cosmic lawmaker because humans were inventing lawmakers themselves. For now, though, peace holds. The Titans are chained, the Olympians enthroned, the world mapped out. It's the calm before another wave of trouble. You lean back into that stillness, letting your breath follow the rhythm of waves, storms, and winds as the divine order settles. And in the quiet corners, Prometheus' silhouette lingers, a reminder that someone is always watching, always planning the next fire to steal. You sense the Olympians standing taller now, as if victory and order have made them grow into their roles. Zeus keeps a firm grip on his thunderbolts, Hera keeps a sharper grip on her grievances. Poseidon roars with salt spray arrogance, and Hades lingers quietly in his shadows. But not everyone in this cosmos is delighted with the new regime. Far from it. Beneath the crust of the earth, Gaia, the very mother of mountains, rivers, and valleys, broods in her ancient patience. She has watched one son overthrow his father, then another son do the same, and she knows cycles better than anyone. Her whisper trembles through roots and stones, warning that power never rests in one hand forever. Historians still argue whether these mythic successions were coded reminders, of how Greek kings often toppled their predecessors. A political cycle dressed up in divine drama. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars think Gaia's role reflects the deep agricultural mindset of the Greeks. Farmers knew that harvest follows planting, and winter follows autumn. The cycle is unavoidable. To them, gods fighting for dominance may have looked a lot like seasons replacing one another. And speaking of cycles, one looms immediately, the gigantomachy. Gaia, furious over her children, the Titans being chained in Tartarus, decides to spawn a new brood. Giants, massive and feral, claw their way from the soil, each taller than city walls, each bristling with monstrous strength. The earth itself provides their armor-stone skin, mountain-shaped shoulders, roots twisted into clubs. Imagine trying to sleep through that racket, the ground itself birthing enemies, the Olympians. Already weary from 10 years of Titan war, now brace for another clash. Lightning flashes, seas churn, mountains tremble. You feel the fatigue in the air, like firefighters called to yet another blaze before their boots have even cooled. Prometheus, clever and careful, watches all of this with narrowed eyes. He knows war wastes strength, and he knows patterns. The cycle of overthrow, rebellion, suppression. It will keep spinning unless someone intervenes with something more creative than brute force. You sense him calculating, like a chess player thinking 5 moves ahead while everyone else just hurls pawns across the board. But tonight, you drift with the thunder. The Olympians may have built their cosmic palace, but Gaia's whisper proves the foundation is already shaking. It's a reminder divine power is never as secure as it seems. The first clash between Olympians and giants rumbles like distant thunder in your ears. You picture enormous figures heaving themselves from the soil, half born of earth and sky, their heads brushing mountain ridges. Each step cracks valleys open, rivers changing course just to skirt around their heels. These are not polite dinner guests. They arrive roaring, stone clubs swinging, eyes glowing with a wild hunger to tear Olympus down. The Olympians, still basking in their Titan victory, suddenly find themselves tested again. Zeus hurls lightning with practiced ease, bolts sizzling into giant shoulders. Poseidon smashes the ground with his trident, shaking enemies into pits. Even Athena, newly born and gleaming in her armor, joins the fray, her shield flashing like a mirror catching the sun. Yet for all their might, the gods find the battle harder than expected. Giants heal quickly, drawing strength from Gaia herself. Historians still argue whether the gigantomachy is an echo of real tribal wars in early Greece, a memory of conflicts between settled farmers and invading raiders. Some see in it the anxiety of a people who knew the land could give life, but also spawn chaos. A quirky tidbit in some vase paintings. Artists showed giants with snake-like legs instead of feet, as if their lower bodies were rooted in the earth. It's a visual joke and a warning they're literally grounded fighters. Impossible to topple completely, the struggle drags on, the air filled with smoke and shouts. Gaia herself whispers encouragement to her children, promising that they will succeed where the Titans failed. But Zeus recalls a prophecy: the Olympians cannot win this war. Alone they will need the aid of a mortal. Strange, isn't it? Gods depending on humans before humans even officially exist in the story. Enter Heracles, son of Zeus and destined hero. With bow in hand, he joins the fray. Each arrow he looses pins a giant to the ground, severing their connection to Gaia's nourishing earth. The god seize the moment, finishing their foes with thunder, tridents, and blades. The ground quakes with each fall, mountain-sized bodies toppling into dust. You drift among the echoes, the battle fading into uneasy silence. The Olympians stand victorious again, but their eyes are wary. Twice now, their throne has been challenged. Twice now, they've relied on more than just raw strength. Zeus tightens his grip on power, but you sense him glancing sideways at Prometheus sharp-eyed. Thoughtful Prometheus wondering who else might someday rise against him. The giants sink into myth. But the lesson lingers. Even gods cannot rest easy. Cycles return, challenges emerge, and no throne is safe forever. You exhale into that thought, letting it settle into your bones like the hum of distant storms. The dust from the gigantomachy settles slowly, like ash drifting after a bonfire. You let yourself float in that haze, sensing the Olympians weary yet triumphant. Twice they've defended their rule, and twice the earth has groaned beneath the weight of war. But in myth, calm never lasts. From the depths, something even more monstrous stirs a shadow that dwarfs both Titan and giant. Enter Typhon, Gaia's last and most terrifying child. Imagine a figure taller than mountains, arms stretching horizon to horizon, fingers sprouting serpents instead of nails. His body bristles with dragon heads, each one spewing fire, smoke, or venom. His voice is not one but a cacophony of roars, hisses, and shrieks that could rattle the marrow of your bones. Even describing him feels like you're breaking a cosmic noise ordinance. Historians still argue whether Typhon reflects ancient volcanic eruptions, fiery mountains spewing smoke and ash, terrifying entire regions. The parallels are tempting: fire, thunder, and chaos erupting from beneath the earth, just as Typhon erupts to challenge the sky. A quirky tidbit: later poets loved exaggerating Typhon's size. One account says his head brushed the stars, his arms stretched east to west, and his legs dragged the seas. Basically, the universe's worst yoga pose, Zeus for once is shaken. He rallies his siblings, but Typhon's first charge scatters even immortals. The ground splits, seas boil, skies darken. Picture the Olympians scrambling, not graceful warriors now, but panicked figures darting for cover, like cats startled by a vacuum cleaner. Yet Zeus gathers himself. With thunderbolts blazing, he faces Typhon head-on. The clash lights the heavens, lightning against fire, storm against eruption. Typhon surges upward, grasping at the very throne of Olympus, while Zeus hurls bolt after bolt. Each one tearing scales and scorching serpent heads, the battle drags across continents. In one version, Zeus is even captured, sinews torn from his body and hidden away. Prometheus, among others, may have whispered guidance to help Zeus recover, though details shift depending on which poet you ask. Either way, Zeus returns with renewed fury, reclaiming his strength finally. With a roar that splits sky and sea, he unleashes a final barrage. Typhon crashes into the earth, writhing, bellowing, swallowed beneath mountains. The Greeks later claimed Mount Etna in Sicily was his prison. Its eruptions and rumblings, the monster's rage echoing upward. So next time a volcano spews lava, you can imagine Typhon rolling his eyes under the crust. The Olympians breathe again. Their throne has held for now. Yet you notice how each victory carves deeper lines of paranoia into Zeus' rule. He has seen too many challengers, felt too many tremors beneath his feet. Power defended is never power secure, and Prometheus, watching quietly, absorbs every lesson. You rest in the aftershocks, listening to the faint rumble of Typhon's eternal prison. The cosmos feels fragile, stitched together by thunder, fear, and vigilance. And in that fragility lies a space one where mortals will soon appear, carrying fire, hunger, and dreams. The thunder of Typhon's defeat still echoes in your ears as you drift into a calmer stretch of the story. The Olympians, scarred by battles with titans, giants, and monsters, finally allow themselves a breath. But beneath their victory sits a deeper challenge: how to rule a cosmos not just of gods and beasts, but of beings who will one day look up, squint at the sky, and wonder why thunder keeps interrupting their picnics. Yes, it's time for humans to enter the stage. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, has been waiting for this moment. He walks quietly among the Olympians, but unlike his thunder-hurling cousins, he is less concerned with weapons and more with possibility. Where others see rocks and rivers, he sees the raw material of life. You can imagine him pausing by a clay bank, letting the mud slip between his fingers, already sketching shapes in his mind. Historians still argue whether Prometheus actually created asterisk humans from clay or merely nurtured and instructed them after they emerged. In Hesiod's account, humans already exist, clumsy and needy, when Prometheus steps forward as their champion. Other versions make him the sculptor, giving mankind their first fragile breath. Either way, he becomes the figure who stands between humanity and the often indifferent Olympians. Here's a quirky tidbit. Later writers describe Prometheus as mixing clay with water, and even a little stardust, crafting humans in a bright form. Some Renaissance artists loved that image so much they painted him like a cosmic potter at a wheel, aprons smeared with mud, sculpting tiny mortals while gods frowned disapprovingly in the background. The Olympians, for their part, are not overly impressed by these new creatures. To them, humanity looks weak, fleeting, and somewhat ridiculous. Short lives, soft bodies, endless needs. You can almost hear Zeus mutter, "Cute, but they'll never last." Yet Prometheus sees potential. He notices the curiosity in mortal eyes, the way their hands twitch as if eager to build, to reach, to grasp. Zeus establishes a pecking order: gods above, mortals below. Worship must flow upward: sacrifices, prayers, obedience. Mortals may live, but they must never forget their place. It's less a benevolent father's embrace and more a landlord handing you a lease, with impossible terms. Prometheus, though, isn't satisfied. He wants these fragile beings to thrive, not just survive. So you hover beside him as he paces, pondering. The gods have hoarded fire, the very essence of warmth, light, and craft. Mortals stumble in darkness, shivering, gnawing raw meat, unable to forge tools or chase away beasts. Prometheus clenches his jaw, knowing that without fire, humanity is doomed to grovel forever in mud. And deep inside, a daring thought sparks: what if he gave them the forbidden flame? The stage is set for the rebellion to come. For now, mortals shiver in the cold, their lives small and brittle. But Prometheus is watching, planning, calculating. You feel his mind moving like a wheel, every click a step toward a decision that will ignite not just wood, but history itself. You linger near Prometheus as he walks among the early mortals. They are fragile figures, bare against the chill, crouched in caves or huddled beneath crude shelters of branches. Their breath fogs in the air, their hands fumble with stones. Their nights stretch endlessly in darkness broken only by the cold gleam of stars. They gnaw roots, chew raw meat, and flinch at every rustle in the woods. You can almost hear their stomachs growling louder than their voices. Prometheus watches with a mixture of pity and admiration. Unlike the Olympians who dismiss mortals as little more than amusing pets, he notices their restless eyes. They look upward often, tracing constellations, perhaps wondering what lives beyond. Their fingers drum against rocks, as if eager to shape something. Their dreams already outpace their means. Historians still argue whether this stage in myth reflects memories of a pre-fire human condition, or if it was just a poetic device to highlight the power of fire. What is certain is that Greek poets knew fire was civilization's heartbeat. Without it, there is no cooking, no pottery, no metalwork, no warmth. A quirky tidbit: archaeologists have uncovered evidence of controlled fire going back at least for 100,000 years, sometimes in the form of blackened hearths where ancient people sat, gossiping while planning hunts. Some scholars even suggest that fire shaped human social life, forcing us to gather in circles, tell stories, and invent bedtime rituals not unlike the one you're listening to now. Prometheus knows Zeus has forbidden giving mortals fire. The gods guard it jealously, as if flame were their trademarked product. To share it would be to upset the hierarchy, narrowing the gap between God and man. And Zeus, well, Zeus doesn't like sharing. He prefers worshippers pliant, not powerful. But Prometheus is stubborn. He imagines mortals shaping clay pots, forging bronze, baking bread, lighting lamps. He envisions them carving temples, writing laws, raising cities, all the things they cannot do, shivering in darkness. To him, fire is not just warmth, it is possibility. He begins to visit them more often, teaching them small skills within the limits of their meager tools. How to stack stones for sturdier walls, how to chip flint to make sharp edges, how to weave grasses for bedding. But he knows these are crumbs without the feast of fire. Mortals look at him with gratitude, yes, but also confusion. Why does this god care? They don't know yet that he sees himself as their guardian, their secret advocate against Olympus' arrogance. You drift through these primitive camps, listening to crackling hunger, shivering bodies, muffled sighs. It's hard not to feel the weight of their struggle. Prometheus feels it too, and his jaw hardens each night he returns to Olympus, passing the golden glow of divine hearths while mortals below freeze in the dark. The injustice, gnaws at him like a hidden ember, and in the quiet you can almost hear his resolve forming. Fire must be stolen, not for glory, not for rebellion, but because without it, these humans will never rise beyond shadows. You trail behind Prometheus as he climbs Olympus, his steps silent, his face set with determination. Around him, the mountain glows with divine fire. Torches burn in braziers, forges spark in cyclopean workshops, and golden hearths flicker in every hall. For the gods, flame is decoration, and convenience for mortals, it is life or death. The contrast is enough to make your teeth grind. Prometheus knows what he's about to attempt borders on madness. Stealing from Zeus is not a prank, it's a declaration. But he also knows he's clever enough to slip where others crash. He watches the guardians of flame, notes their patterns, times their movements. You sense his mind ticking like clockwork, each calculation sharpening his plan. Historians still argue about the details of the theft. Some say Prometheus crept into Hephaestus' forge, snatching a glowing coal while sparks leapt around him. Others claim he plucked a flame directly from the sun, hiding it in a stalk of fennel, a plant with a hollow stem perfect for smuggling embers. The fennel version seems almost comical. You picture the Titan trotting down the mountain with what looks like a giant herbal torch, muttering, "Don't mind me, just grabbing salad." Here's a quirky tidbit. Fennel stalks were indeed used in ancient Greece. To carry embers during long journeys, the fibrous core kept fire alive without blazing. Like a portable battery pack long before USB cables, Prometheus slips through. Olympus glow, every flicker casting a shadow that could betray him. He reaches the fire, its heat licking at his skin, and plucks it carefully. He tucks the ember into Fennel's hollow stalk, the flame muffled but alive. For a heartbeat, the world holds still. Then he turns and begins the descent, each step heavy with stolen light. You follow him down the slopes, the wind tugging at his cloak. The embers glow faint but steady. Below, mortals shiver, unaware that salvation is on its way. Prometheus cradles the fennel like a secret, and though the mountain trembles faintly as if Zeus senses something amiss, he presses forward. When he reaches the mortal camps, he lowers the stalk and breathes gently on the ember. It sparks, flares, catches on dry grass, flames leap upward, painting faces in gold and crimson. Gasps ripple through the crowd, fingers stretch toward. Warmth, shadows dance on cave walls, and for the first time, humans feel more than fear. In the dark they feel power. The air fills with the crackle of wood, the hiss of roasting meat, the sigh of warmth soaking into bones. Prometheus smiles faintly. He has not just given fire, he has given possibility. The mortals don't yet grasp what this means, but their eyes gleam with wonder. And you, drifting close, can almost feel the shift in the cosmos, for up above, Zeus is stirring. He knows something has changed, though he may not yet know how. And when he discovers the theft, the skies themselves will rumble with his fury. The flames crackle in mortal hands, and for a while the world feels balanced. You hover close, watching how quickly people adapt. Sparks leap from hearths into kilns, then into forges. Stone blades give way to bronze. Hunters return with roasted meat rather than raw sinew. Darkness becomes something you can push back with a torch instead of simply enduring. Prometheus lingers nearby, proud but cautious. He knows his gift is more than warmth. It's progress itself. Fire is the first domino, and he's tipped it. Soon mortals will bend metal, shape clay, bake bread, light beacons on shorelines to guide ships. All of it radiates from this single ember carried down in fennel dot, but Olympus does not stay ignorant. One evening, as mortals dance around their new bonfires, a shadow thickens above. Clouds roll in, heavy and bruised dark. Lightning lashes the horizon, a herald of wrath. Zeus has seen the glow where no glow should be. He has smelled the smoke rising from human camps, and his jaw tightens with rage. From his throne, he calls the gods to witness. His voice booms, "Asterisk, who dares grant mortals what is ours alone? Who has tipped the order of the world?" Asterisk silence ripples through the hall. Some glance at Prometheus, some pretend ignorance. Prometheus himself does not flinch. He's clever enough to know denial won't save him. Zeus' fury grows sharper when he realizes what this means. Mortals, once fragile, now have tools to resist. The gap between human and God has narrowed, if only a little. That narrowing feels intolerable to the king of Olympus, who built his throne on distance, awe, and fear. Fire is not just flame, it is rebellion disguised as warmth. Here's a quirky tidbit in Hesiod's account. Zeus had already punished mortals by withholding fire, after Prometheus tricked him with the sacrificial bones. The theft of flame was not just kindness to humans, it was defiance layered atop insult. Imagine being tricked into eating scraps, then having your property stolen, all within the same cosmic month. No wonder Zeus was livid. The clouds gather tighter, thunder rumbling like an angry drum. Zeus decides punishment must be swift, cruel, and symbolic. He will make an example so sharp that none mortal or divine will forget. Fire may have slipped through his fingers once, but the hand that strikes back will be iron. Down below, humans sense the change. The wind stiffens, the fire gutters, animals scatter into the night. They don't know it yet, but their benefactor is about to pay dearly for his generosity. Prometheus looks skyward, his jaw set. He does not regret, but neither does he expect mercy. And you, floating between God and Titan, feel the tension coil like a bowstring. The stage is set for punishment, and it will not be a small one. It will be the kind that echoes across ages, etched into mountains and myths alike. The sentence comes quickly, and it comes without pity. Zeus declares that Prometheus must be bound not in some dungeon, not in Tartarus alongside the Titans, but out in the open, where sky and wind will mock him endlessly. A punishment meant not only to break him, but to serve as a living billboard. This is what happens when you cross Olympus. Hephaestus, master smith of the gods, is ordered to forge chains so unbreakable they laugh at the idea of rust. You can almost hear the ring of hammer on anvil, sparks flying like captured stars. There's irony in it. Prometheus stole fire, and now the tools of fire are used to craft his cage. Soon, the Titan is dragged up the steep slopes of the Caucasus Mountains, a range so jagged and high it feels designed for suffering. Cold winds knife across the ridges and snow swirls like salt on an open wound. Historians still argue whether this Caucasus was a specific mountain range known to the Greeks, or more of a poetic shorthand for the edge of the world. Either way, it's not a vacation spot. Prometheus is chained flat against a cliff face, iron biting into wrists and ankles. His chest heaves against the stone, and even he, clever Titan, cannot twist free. Below him stretches nothing but abyss. Above, endless sky. No hearth fire, no comfort, only exposure. The gods wanted spectacle, and spectacle they achieved. Then comes the cruelest flourish. Zeus summons a great eagle, colossal in wingspan, eyes like burning coals. Day after day, it swoops down to tear at Prometheus' liver, feasting on what never diminishes. You wince at the thought ancient Greeks chose the liver because they believed it was the seat of human emotion and vitality, a daily assault not just on body but on spirit. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions of the myth suggest the eagle wasn't ordinary at all, but a child of Typhon, that monstrous storm serpent. Imagine your tormentor being part of another ancient feud. It's like being kicked by the nephew of someone you already fought. And yet, bound there against the mountain, Prometheus endures. His jaw clenches, his cries echo, but he refuses to beg. Each dawn brings the eagle's shadow, and each night he lies broken but alive, only to regenerate for the cycle to begin again. Pain eternal, but also defiance eternal. Down below, humans continue to tend their fires, roast their bread and hammer their bronze. They do not know the full price being paid for their gift, but they feel the weight in their myths. Some whisper gratitude, others caution. After all, every flicker of flame carries a trace of Prometheus' suffering. And so you sit with him a while, listening to chains clink in the wind, watching the eagle's silhouette shrink into the horizon, knowing it will return tomorrow. The punishment is brutal, but in a strange way, Prometheus has won. Mortals keep their fire. His agony proves the gift cannot be revoked. The mountain holds its prisoner tightly. But the world beyond does not pause. Word of Prometheus' torment spreads, seeping into mortal whispers and divine gossip alike. Everyone knows the Titan who dared to cross Zeus now hangs in chains. liver gnawed each day by a merciless eagle. You can almost imagine it being used as a bedtime threat. Behave, or Zeus will make you Prometheus' roommate on that mountain dot for the Olympians. The punishment is not just justice, it is theater. Gods stroll past in conversation, letting their eyes flick toward the distant Caucasus, as though they're checking whether Zeus' billboard of dominance is still visible. And yes, there he is, the Titan nailed to stone, a warning in flesh. The message is clear: defiance carries no escape clause, yet even in this misery, something peculiar stirs. Prometheus, locked to the rock, still murmurs clever words to the winds. He does not plead for freedom. Instead, he drops hints, riddles about what he knows of the future. For this Titan's mind, remember, is sharper than iron. He carries a secret, the knowledge that one day Zeus himself will face danger from his own line, just as Cronus and Uranus before him. Historians still argue whether this element of the story reflects Greek anxieties about monarchy, that hidden within every reign is the seed of its own downfall. You might call it cosmic karma, or just an ancient version of what goes around, comes around. Here's a quirky tidbit: some vase paintings depict Prometheus' torment, not as unending misery, but with him actively conversing with visitors, Heracles, Hermes, even the occasional nymph. Imagine that, chained to a rock, but still networking. Mortals, for their part, grow bolder with the fire. They forge plows and axes, carve out farmland, raise crude cities. In their progress, they echo Prometheus' stubborn resilience. The more Zeus tries to frighten them, the more they lean into the sparks gifted by their chained benefactor. At night, if you lean in close, you hear Prometheus' laughter drifting down the slopes. It isn't loud, more of a dry chuckle, the kind someone makes when the joke's on the other guy. Because despite the talons, despite the agony, he has won something Zeus cannot take back. Humans burning their torches in the dark, carrying little suns wherever they go. The eagle circles again, wings blotting out the stars for a heartbeat. The chains rattle, the liver tears, but the Titan's eyes never lose their fire. Defiance, you realize, is its own kind of immortality. The gods above may savor their victory, but among the Olympians there lingers a gnawing unease. Zeus' thunderbolts may silence Titans and pin them in Tartarus, but Prometheus' chained silhouette on the Caucasus is a reminder that cleverness slips through cracks brute force can't seal. You picture the other gods shifting in their seats, wondering what else this wily Titan has tucked away in his mind. Prometheus, though tormented, does not stay idle. His lips murmur riddles to the wind, half poems and half prophecies. Knowing the gods listen even when they pretend not to, he hints that Zeus himself is not invincible, that one day a union might spell the king's undoing. But he refuses to say more, enjoying the only power left to him, the power of knowing something others desperately want. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects the human suspicion that no ruler is ever truly secure. Ancient city-states often saw tyrants rise and fall, and Prometheus' secret felt like a narrative safety valve. Yes, even the almighty Zeus will face reckoning. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions of the tale suggest Prometheus boasted of his knowledge to visiting nymphs or to the wandering Hermes, deliberately taunting Zeus with what he wouldn't reveal. It's the mythic equivalent of whispering, "I know something you don't know," while chained to a rock. Meanwhile, humanity pushes forward. The fire they've received ignites more than torches. Farmers invent irrigation channels to coax life from stubborn soil. Fishermen roast their catches on coals, no longer fearing spoiled meat. Artisans melt metals, hammering bronze blades that glint under the sun. These small advancements ripple outward, cities grow, trade expands, and culture begins its climb. Mortals do not know it, but every spark in their hearths is a thread tying them back to the Titan's suffering. And still, the eagle returns. Each morning its wings blot out dawn. Each night Prometheus lies hollowed and reborn. Yet he does not break. There's even a perverse rhythm to it now, as though he has folded the agony into his heartbeat. His resilience itself becomes a myth whispered among humans, pain without surrender, torment without silence. You sit with him again on the cliffside, listening to the chains hum in the wind, sensing how his secret gnaws at Zeus as surely as the eagle gnaws at him. Power punishes, but knowledge endures, and Prometheus knows his time will come. The winds howl sharper now, carrying the sting of snow and the echo of Zeus' wrath. Prometheus hangs there, chest heaving, iron biting his flesh, and yet he looks outward rather than inward. His eyes roam the horizon, watching smoke rise from mortal hearths far below. Each plume is proof that his pain has meaning, a stubborn reminder that humanity carries on. But Zeus is not content with a single punishment. The king of gods schemes further, because tyranny always multiplies its cruelty. If Prometheus gave humans fire, Zeus will make them regret it. He summons the divine craftsman Hephaestus once more, but this time not for chains. Instead, the forge must shape clay into something deceptively beautiful. The first woman, this, of course, will be Pandora. You picture Hephaestus carefully molding her frame, Athena breathing in wisdom like a fragile perfume, Aphrodite sprinkling her with irresistible charm. Each god contributes a gift, though the package is less blessing than trap. Hermes slyly slips in deceit and cunning, the kind that makes promises sparkle but rot when opened. Historians still argue whether Pandora was meant as a deliberate punishment for men alone, or whether she was originally celebrated as the bringer of life before the myth soured. It's an uncomfortable debate. Was she gift or curse, or a little of both? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some vase art shows Pandora emerging directly from the earth like a plant, rather than being sculpted. Imagine that humans tending their gardens, and up pops the first woman like a daisy. That would make for quite the awkward harvest, but in most tellings, she is delivered to Prometheus, Prometheus' less sharp brother. Despite warnings, Epimetheus cannot resist her radiance, and tucked in her hands, or perhaps hidden in her home, is a sealed jar later mistranslated as a box. Inside lies every misery Zeus can dream up: disease, toil, famine, despair. Meanwhile, back on the Caucasus cliff, Prometheus twists against his bonds, knowing all too well what's unfolding below. He tried to outsmart fate by gifting humans the spark of progress, but Zeus has found a way to lace that gift with suffering. Fire, yes, but also a jar of sorrows. The eagle lands again, wings beating against the stone. Flesh tears, chains rattle, but Prometheus' eyes burn brighter, not dimmer, because even as Zeus plots, even as mortals stumble into their trials, the Titan clings to his secret. He knows a time will come when the balance shifts once more, and even the king of the gods will need him. Far below the Caucasus, Pandora's story unfolds like a slow-motion avalanche, quiet at first, then unstoppable. Epimetheus, sweet but not exactly sharp, cannot resist her presence. He sees only beauty, not the careful malice folded into her design. He welcomes her warmly, ignoring Prometheus' stern warnings never to accept a gift from Zeus. You can almost hear Prometheus groaning from his cliffside, chains clanking with frustration. Asterisk, one job, brother. Just one job. Asterisk, at first, life seems brighter. Pandora moves gracefully through Epimetheus' home, her voice lilting like a new song, her hands skilled in tasks no one taught her. But then comes the jar, large, sealed, humming faintly with what should never be opened. And here curiosity gnaws. Mortals may resist hunger or cold or even Zeus' thunder, but curiosity? That's a whole different torment. Historians still argue whether Pandora opened the jar out of innocent wonder, or whether Zeus deliberately built that irresistible urge into her nature. Was she a villain, a victim, or just a symbol? The ambiguity keeps scholars scribbling, even as the myth itself spreads like wildfire. And then the lid lifts. Out swarms every misery humans had not yet known, fevers that scorch the body, coughs that steal breath, blights that wither crops, grief that cracks hearts. Hardship tumbles into the world like coins from a broken purse, scattering too fast to gather back. One moment, humanity celebrated fire. The next, they stagger beneath pain. Here's a quirky tidbit. The Greeks called disease nosos, and in some stories, these afflictions weren't vague abstractions but actual spirits winged, malevolent beings darting through the air to sting mortals. Imagine sneezing not because of pollen, but because a tiny demon zipped up your nose. Yet not everything escapes. At the bottom of the jar lies one final presence, hope. When Pandora slams the lid shut in horror, hope remains trapped inside. And here the debate begins again. Did she save hope for mankind, leaving them at least one bomb against despair? Or did she doom humanity by locking it away, making suffering endless and unsoftened? The myth refuses to choose. Meanwhile, on his mountain, Prometheus hears faint echoes of humanity's cries drifting upward. His chest rises and falls, blood-staining stone, the eagle's talons wet. He cannot intervene, yet he does not despair, for he knows hope, whether sealed or released, never truly vanishes. It lingers in myths, in sparks, in the stubbornness of mortals who keep lighting their fires even when storms rage. Chains rattle in the wind, and you feel the Titan's grim smile through the agony. Zeus may have delivered sorrow in jars, but Prometheus knows that humanity's resilience, its refusal to lie down quietly, will always burn brighter than any punishment the gods devise. The jar has been opened, its contents scattered across the world, and mortals stumble under the weight of their new burdens. Sickness clings to households, toil bends backs, famine gnaws at bellies. For the first time, people realize that fire alone cannot solve everything. You can almost hear the weary sigh ripple across villages' progress, yes, but also pain as its constant companion. Prometheus, chained high in the Caucasus, hears whispers of this chaos. Carried on mountain winds, the cries of mortals mingle with the shriek of the eagle above him. He knows the pattern well. Zeus gives with one hand and snatches with the other, ensuring mortals remain humble, fearful, dependent. Yet Zeus himself does not rest easy. The memory of Prometheus' words lingers in his mind, that sly hint of a secret, a prophecy about his own downfall. Kings may sit tall on thrones, but it only takes one whispered future to make the seat feel like it's made of thorns. Historians still argue whether these myths reflect a Greek truth. Every ruler, no matter how mighty, feared the next rebellion as much as the last. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some local traditions, Zeus' paranoia over prophecy made him consult oracles constantly. Imagine the most powerful being in the cosmos, pacing like a worried parent waiting for exam results, desperate for reassurance. Absolute power apparently comes with absolute insecurity, and so Zeus' unease grows into obsession. He cannot break Prometheus through pain alone. Knowledge is the one treasure chains cannot pry loose. Each day, as the eagle tears flesh, Zeus hopes suffering will crack the Titan's lips open. Each night, when Prometheus lies bloodied yet silent, Zeus fumes hotter than his THUNDERBOLTS below. Mortals adapt in spite of misery. They learn to bury their dead with rituals, to soften despair with stories, to cling to hope whether or not it escaped the jar. In their resilience, they echo Prometheus himself battered daily, yet never surrendering entirely. On the cliff, you feel the irony stretched tight. Zeus, king of Olympus, rages in his palace, restless despite his crown. Prometheus, nailed to stone, finds a strange kind of peace in his silence. One has freedom but no ease. The other has agony but unshakable defiance. Which, you wonder, is the true power? The eagle circles again, talons glinting. Prometheus' chains sing against the rock. Yet in his eyes burns that same ember he once carried in fennel stalks, a reminder. That fire is more than flame. It is endurance, knowledge, and a quiet refusal to bow. The seasons turn while Prometheus hangs, and you sense time itself flowing like a weary river. Snow melts, flowers bloom, crops sprout, and still the eagle comes. Mortals have learned to live with suffering, weaving it into their days as though it were another harvest cycle, seed, growth, blight, and regrowth. Humanity adapts because that is what humanity does best. Up on the cliffs, Prometheus endures the same cycle in miniature. Dawn brings talons, dusk brings blood, night brings aching silence, and then it begins again. Yet he uses even this rhythm as fuel for thought. He ponders, sharp as ever, on what he knows Zeus does not, the secret of the prophecy. Somewhere, somehow, the king of the gods faces a downfall tied to love and lineage, and only Prometheus holds the key to avoiding it. Historians still argue whether this knowledge represented the Greek belief that even gods bowed to fate. After all, if destiny could topple Uranus and Cronus, Why not Zeus? In this way, Prometheus' secret becomes more terrifying than his chains. He represents the idea that knowledge can outweigh brute power. Here's a quirky tidbit in some plays. Prometheus taunts Zeus openly from his cliff, refusing to reveal the prophecy unless freed. Imagine being chained, half-eaten, and still managing to troll the king of gods with riddles. That's mythic-grade sauce. Meanwhile, mortals invent more ways to harness their fire. They fire clay into sturdier pots, forge sharper blades, and even use flame for rituals, believing smoke carries prayers upward. Around each hearth, stories of Prometheus are told, the titan who suffered so they might thrive. These tales grow into cultural glue, a way to explain both their gifts and their hardships. On Olympus, Zeus listens for cracks in Prometheus' resolve. He expects one day to hear surrender carried on the wind, but it never comes. The titan may be bound in iron, but his silence binds Zeus more tightly than any chain. Each unspoken word is a barb in the king's pride. You lean into the mountain air, feeling the strange equilibrium settle. Pain flows endlessly, but so does defiance. Humanity struggles, but it also endures. Fire burns, storms rage, and still the secret sits locked in Prometheus' chest like treasure in an unbreakable vault. The eagle swoops again, wings blotting out the stars. Chains groan, flesh tears, but Prometheus' eyes remain sharp. He suffers, yes, but he will not surrender his secret, not even to silence the storm. The centuries grind on, and the world shifts around Prometheus' agony. Empires rise and crumble, mortals scatter across new lands, and myths spread like wildfire, told around countless hearths. Yet on the lonely Caucasus cliffs, the scene never changes. Chains remain taut, the eagle descends, the titan groans, and then the cycle resets. You can almost feel time growing tired of repeating itself, but still it turns. Prometheus' endurance begins to ripple into legend among humans. They imagine his suffering as the ultimate price of progress, a cosmic tax paid so they might enjoy roasted grain, forged plows, and warm nights. Every fire they strike feels like an act of remembrance. You wonder if they realize they are honoring him each time they light a torch against the dark. Zeus, meanwhile, grows restless. His paranoia over the prophecy gnaws at him more sharply than the eagle gnaws at Prometheus. He knows the titan's silence is not stubbornness alone, it's strategy. Somewhere in those clever riddles lies the key to Olympus' stability, and without it, Zeus' throne feels less like marble and more like sand. Historians still argue whether this myth reveals Greek distrust of kings, who tried to appear invincible but were secretly terrified of losing their crowns. Here's a quirky tidbit. Later dramatists imagine that even other gods pitied Prometheus. In some fragments, Oceanus himself visits, urging the titan to apologize to Zeus and end the torment. Prometheus refuses, naturally, probably rolling his eyes as best he can while chained to a rock. Mankind, despite their afflictions, flourishes slowly. They build temples, carve statues, launch ships across wine-dark seas. They learn to worship not just Zeus but a whole array of gods, each receiving offerings over sacred fires. Prometheus' flame becomes the very medium of worship, ironically fueling Zeus' own cults. You picture the titan chuckling. Despite the eagle's beak in his side, "Asterisk, even your temples burn my fire, old tyrant." Asterisk on the cliff. The daily torment becomes almost ritualistic. Dawn scream, dusk, silence. Yet Prometheus refuses despair. His mind, even in chains, roams wider than Zeus' kingdom. He knows fate sits above even Olympus, and he trusts that the prophecy he guards will one day bend the storm back toward balance. And so you linger in this endless loop with him, watching humanity push forward, watching Zeus pace Olympus, and watching the eagle carve its bloody signature across the titan's chest. Nothing changes, yet everything shifts. The endurance itself becomes the story, the silence that speaks louder than thunder. One morning, the eagle arrives later than usual, its cry echoing faintly across the peaks. Prometheus notices, though he does not mistake it for mercy. Nothing in Zeus' system of punishment ever softens. Yet the delay hints at something disturbance elsewhere, a ripple in the perfect tyranny. And indeed, below Olympus, new stories begin to coil like smoke. Heroes are stirring in the mortal world. Prometheus listens through the wind as whispers drift upward. There is Heracles, son of Zeus, born of one of the gods' many entanglements with mortals, stronger than any man before him, destined to perform impossible labors. His name passes across valleys and rivers, spoken with awe. For the first time in eons, Prometheus feels the faintest crack in the monotony of his suffering. Perhaps here lies the agent of change. Historians still argue whether the story of Heracles freeing Prometheus was added later, to weave the Titan into Greece's heroic cycle. Was it originally part of the myth, or a patchwork stitch tying together divine rebellion with mortal glory? The debates continue, each scholar tossing thunderbolts of their own imprint. Here's a quirky tidbit some vase paintings show Heracles shooting the eagle before he even knows who Prometheus is, just casually spotting a giant bird and deciding it looks like target practice. Imagine stumbling onto a chained Titan mid-hunt, shrugging, and saying, "Might as well help." On Olympus, Zeus keeps pacing. He has ordered the eagle relentlessly, but Prometheus' silence is absolute. Not even pain has cracked it. The prophecy still festers, locked away. Zeus begins to sense that force will never unlock it. He will need leverage, perhaps even negotiation. The thought irritates him like a pebble in his sandal dock. Meanwhile, mortals grow stronger, braver. Their myths swell with new champions: Achilles, Perseus, Heracles. In every story, fire plays its quiet role, forging weapons, burning sacrifices, lighting the way. Each hero's torch traces back to Prometheus' defiance. It's as though the Titan whispers in their veins, reminding them not to bow too easily. And so, you sense momentum building. The eagle still feeds, the chains still bind. But history begins to shift beneath Prometheus like tectonic plates grinding. The day of change, once so distant, edges closer with each new tale of mortal courage. The Titan's eyes glimmer faintly brighter in the mountain gloom. The rumor of Heracles swells louder, carried on mortal tongues like a drumbeat. 12 labors, each more absurd than the last, slaying a lion whose hide no blade could pierce, capturing a boar the size of a house, cleaning out stables that smelled worse than Zeus' ego after victory. You picture Prometheus listening from his perch, lips curling in a rare smile. At last, a mortal or half-mortal strong enough to tilt the balance from the heights of Olympus. Zeus watches as well. He knows Heracles is his son, born of one of those infamous dalliances with mortal women. Pride mixes uneasily with fear. For every hero Zeus sires, he risks planting the seed of his own undoing. Historians still argue whether myths like this reflect the Greeks' uneasy attitude toward lineage was a powerful error, blessing all the ultimate threat. Meanwhile, the eagle descends as always. Its talons shred, its beak pierces, but Prometheus' gaze drifts elsewhere. The pain is background noise now, part of the scenery. What matters is the shape of the horizon. He senses a shift, the way sailors smell a storm before clouds appear. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some versions of the Heracles myth suggest he practiced archery daily, on passing birds, making the eagle's downfall almost comic. Picture Prometheus chained in agony, watching this demigod casually notch an arrow. And centuries of torment solved with one well-aimed shot. Down below, mortals continue their slow dance with progress. They farm, they forge, they build, but they also tell stories, and those stories grow teeth. Heroes emerge from those tales not just to slay monsters, but to challenge the very order. The gods enforce. Every heroic saga is, in a way, Prometheus' legacy fire reshaped into courage. Zeus senses it too. Each new hero is another ember catching in dry grass. The more he tries to control, the more rebellion smolders beneath. Prometheus' prophecy gnaws at him. Somewhere, some union threatens to topple his reign. Perhaps this Heracles is part of that danger, or perhaps part of its solution. Either way, Zeus cannot ignore the storm forming on his borders. On the Caucasus cliffs, Prometheus lifts his head against the wind. He does not cry out this time when the eagle strikes. Instead, he laughs, low and rough, because he knows the wheel of fate is turning. The chains still hold, but the story is moving, and that, more than anything, is his victory. Heracles enters your imagination with the weight of legend already wrapped around him. Muscles like marble, a club that looks more like a tree trunk than a weapon, and that lion-skin cloak spoils from the Nemean beast, still gleaming as if polished by applause. He doesn't march up to Prometheus in silence. No, the ground seems to shift with his steps. The way movie sound designers crank up the bass to tell you someone important just arrived. The eagle circles above, its wings cutting the air in slow arcs. For centuries it has known no rival, a creature bred for cruelty, perhaps even born from Zeus' own malice. But Heracles is not here to marvel at divine punishments. He looks up, squints into the sky, and raises his bow. A historical aside for you, the Greeks were ambivalent about archery. On one hand, it was practical, a hunter's skill. On the other, it felt cowardly compared to face-to-face spear combat. And yet, here, an arrow would do what swords and hammers could not end centuries of torment in a heartbeat. Prometheus lifts his weary head, the eternal prisoner regarding the mortal demigod hybrid with suspicion and hope tangled together. He has seen many mortals pass below, none able to alter his fate. But this one radiates something different, strength, yes, but also a kind of stubborn compassion. Heracles doesn't ask permission. He simply pulls the string, "Let's fly," and the arrow whistles like freedom. The eagle screams as it plummets, wings collapsing into gravity's grip. For the first time in eons, Prometheus feels silence. Not the pause between screeches, but true, clean quiet. The absence of daily torture is so alien that it aches worse than the wound itself. He almost doesn't know how to breathe without pain riding shotgun. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some fringe accounts insist Heracles roasted the eagle afterward. A little celestial barbecue to celebrate. Imagine that immortal bird of punishment, now reduced to drumsticks. Historians still argue whether that's satire layered onto the myth, but you can almost hear the campfire crackle in the background. And in that silence, Heracles steps closer, surveying the chains. Bronze fused into rock, forged not by mortal hands but by Hephaestus himself. Even Heracles, breaker of beasts, cannot smash them outright. His role is not to finish Prometheus' suffering, but to interrupt it, to give him air long enough to remember what freedom might feel like. Prometheus whispers thanks, though his voice is gravelly from centuries of screaming. Heracles shrugs, already thinking about the next impossible labor on his list. But something in the Titan's eyes lingers. They share a glance, one chained to destiny, one running headlong into it. Both pawns in Zeus' games, both, in their own way, rebelling against him. As the eagle's body fades into myth and memory, Prometheus lifts his gaze higher. The prophecy stirs again. Perhaps Heracles is not just a rescuer but a signpost. A reminder that no reign, not even Zeus, can last forever. The chains still bite into Prometheus' flesh, but with the eagle gone, the air feels almost light. The silence spreads like cool water over burned skin. You imagine him inhaling slowly, filling his chest without that sharp, tearing interruption. After so long, it's less relief and more bewilderment. Pain had been his clock, his calendar, his entire soundtrack. Now, for a moment, he doesn't know what time is. Heracles squats near the rock, tilting his head at the Titan. He's not one for big speeches. Most of his glory comes from muscle. Not monologues, but there's a faint grin, the kind you'd wear after popping open a stubborn pickle jar. A little "you're welcome," without saying it aloud. Prometheus studies him carefully. This is Zeus' son, after all, which makes him both enemy and ally. Yet here he stands, arrow loosed against Zeus' chosen tormentor. The paradox is delicious. Historians still argue whether the Heracles rescue was written into the myth early on, or patched in later to give mortals a hero's hand in divine affairs. Either way, the scene plays like the crossover episode everyone had been waiting for. A quirky detail slips in. Some vase paintings show Heracles not only shooting the eagle, but also chatting with Prometheus, as if they're all drinking buddies. Picture a demigod in a lion cape leaning on a bough, swapping small talk with a chained titan, while an eagle corpse flops awkwardly off to the side. Ancient art had its sense of humor. The chains, however, remain. Forged by Hephaestus, infused with divine authority, they cannot simply be yanked apart. Even Heracles' legendary strength strains uselessly. You see him tug once, twice, with that classic stubbornness until Prometheus chuckles hoarsely. Nice try. He might rasp, but some knots require more than brute force. And this is where the myth folds into larger currents. Prometheus' partial release foreshadows the eventual shifts in divine order. The Titan remains bound but not helpless. The eagle symbol of Zeus' wrath is gone. In its place, there's the possibility of dialogue, the tiniest crack in the wall. Freedom isn't won in a single gesture. It's negotiated, chipped at, like sculptors carving marble into shape from Olympus. Zeus feels the disturbance. Maybe he fumes, maybe his size accounts differ. But he doesn't strike Heracles down, which tells you everything. Perhaps the king of gods senses that even punishment must evolve. That cruelty unchecked risks rebellion. Or perhaps he simply cannot bring himself to destroy his favorite mortal son. Either way, the stalemate deepens. Prometheus leans back against the stone. The chain's heavy but somehow looser in spirit. The eagle won't return tonight, nor tomorrow, nor ever again. For the first time in ages, he can close his eyes and drift without flinching. It's not freedom, not yet, but it's something. And that something is enough to keep him breathing, waiting, planning. The quiet after Heracles' arrow lingers like a strange new climate. A season that Prometheus had forgotten could exist. The eagle's absence is not just a gap in sound. It's a restructuring of reality itself. Imagine living for centuries with an alarm clock that chews on your liver every morning. Then suddenly, silence. It's almost unnerving. Like a horror movie where the monster has gone missing and you're waiting for the jump scare. Prometheus lifts his head and tests the air. No wings beating. No talons raking. No screech rolling down the cliffs. Just the wind. It whistles faintly through the mountains, carrying scents of pine and distant snow. For once, he can breathe deeply, and the air feels like a banquet. Heracles doesn't linger long. He has labor still waiting. Some king probably wants another impossible errand. Checked off his celestial chore list. But before he leaves, he looks back at the Titan. Their eyes lock in a moment of strange kinship. One punished by the gods for giving too much. One punished by the gods for being born too strong. You get the sense both understand what it means to be caught between divine arrogance and mortal necessity. Historians still argue whether Heracles was meant to be a liberator or merely an intermission. Was the slaying of the eagle Zeus' reluctant concession? Or was it a loophole snuck in by storytellers? Who couldn't bear to leave Prometheus in agony forever? The ambiguity itself may be the point. Myths aren't tidy. They're messy, like family dinners where no one agrees on dessert. Here's a quirky tidbit. Later philosophers used Prometheus' brief respite as a metaphor for political reform. The eagle's death symbolized the possibility of easing tyranny, without toppling it entirely, kind of like when a dictator allows Netflix but still bans elections. Not full freedom, but a glimpse of it. Prometheus leans back. His chain still pressing into skin, but no longer defining every heartbeat. For the first time in an age, he can imagine thoughts that aren't framed by pain. He thinks of mortals below, their fires spreading, their tools sharpening, their cities growing taller. He wonders if they know he still watches, if they still whisper thanks into their hearth smoke. Zeus feels the change, too. From his throne on Olympus, he senses the eagle's silence and frowns. But he does not send another. Maybe pride stops him. Sending a second bird would admit weakness. Or maybe, deep down, he understands that too much cruelty breeds rebellion. Even gods must manage their reputations. And so the new rhythm settles, Prometheus chained, but unbroken. Zeus ruling but uneasy. Mortals thriving but restless. The eagle's death is not the end of the story, it's a pivot. A pause, a reminder that nothing, not even divine punishment, lasts forever. You imagine Prometheus sitting in that sudden calm. The eagle gone, the chains still clamped. It's like leaving a dentist's chair after a marathon appointment. Yes, the drill is quiet now, but the ache echoes in your nerves. His wounds still seep, but instead of new rips each day, they slowly knit. The absence of torment becomes its own kind of miracle. A strange luxury he hasn't tasted for longer than mortals can measure. The mountains themselves seem to shift in tone. Without the daily shrieks, the Caucasus cliffs hum with gentler noises, wind in the gullies. The distant tumble of rocks, the occasional snap of frost-loosening stone. Prometheus notices things he had ignored for centuries, lichen crawling in patches, mountain goats darting on ledges, clouds drifting lazily above. It's as if nature reclaims the space the eagle monopolized. Heracles has gone back to his labors, leaving only that small spark of mortal defiance. Prometheus replays the sight of the arrow, the clean arc, the eagle collapsing. He chuckles, gravelly but genuine. One well-placed shaft did what gods could not, interrupt divine punishment. Historians still argue whether this was meant as satire, a jab that sometimes immortals bow outranks. Zeus' thunderbolt. A quirky fringe tale suggests the eagle's feathers scattered across the world became talismans. Shepherds supposedly tucked them into cloaks for courage, hunters into quivers for accuracy. Imagine that. Remnants of torment repurposed as lucky charms, a cosmic recycling project. Meanwhile, down among mortals, fire spreads in hearths and forges, transforming their nights. They carve plows, they smelt bronze, they roast grains. Each flame flickers a secret tribute to Prometheus, though most don't realize it. The Titan imagines their laughter around firesides, their songs rising with smoke. Even bound, he feels present in their warmth. And then there is Zeus, on Olympus. The absence of the eagle gnaws at him. He tells himself it was minor, nothing worth retaliation. Yet deep inside, he hears Prometheus' old prophecy beating like a drum. One union will end his reign. That thought makes him pace. He may be king, but kingship feels less steady now. Prometheus, for his part, savors the lull. Not freedom, not yet, but a reprieve. Enough to remember who he is, firebringer, trickster, stubborn brother of humanity. And in the silence, he begins to dream again, not just of release, but of what comes after. The silence stretches into days, then weeks, until it feels almost normal. Prometheus, still shackled, relearns the rhythm of existence without the constant slicing of talons. His wounds heal, leaving scars that shimmer faintly in the moonlight. He tilts his head back against the cold rock and listens not for screams, but for the sounds of the world moving on. You picture him tracking the seasons like a board calendar app. Snow melts into rivulets that carve the mountain sides. Spring grasses poke stubbornly through cracks. Birds, ordinary ones, not divine torturers, flutter and chatter in the distance. Prometheus chuckles dryly at their carefree songs. It's the first time in centuries he has found their melodies amusing, rather than cruel reminders of wings. Meanwhile, mortals below push their fiery gifts further. Bronze tools edge toward artistry, pottery carries painted stories, and ships dare deeper waters. Historians still argue whether myths like Prometheus influenced early Greek exploration. Did sailors believe their torches carried divine legacy? The evidence is hazy, but you can imagine a captain whispering thanks to the Titan before setting sail into an unknown horizon. A quirky tidbit, some later writers claimed Prometheus could dreamwalk into mortal minds, nudging inventors while they slept. That's the kind of headcanon that makes you imagine him as the universe's most tired, but devoted tech support. Chained to a mountain yet still troubleshooting humanity's updates, Zeus notices the changes too. Mortals grow bolder, stories spread faster, and sacrifices to the gods feel more obligatory than heartfelt. He feels the prophecy lurking. Each mortal triumph, each hero's tale, sounds like a step toward his downfall. He paces Olympus' marble halls, thunderbolt in hand, rehearsing defenses he may never need, but fears all the same. Prometheus, though chained, becomes almost serene. He has tasted endless agony, and now he tastes stillness. It is not full liberty, but it's a kind of victory. And with the eagle gone, his thoughts sharpen. He begins weaving plans not just for escape, but for the day when gods themselves might falter. For now, he rests in that eerie peace, scars glowing faintly, eyes fixed on the stars. They remind him of fire, tiny eternal sparks scattered in endless black. Humanity has its embers, Zeus has his lightning, and Prometheus, bound but unbroken, waits for the next strike in the long storm of fate. Nights on the Caucasus now feel different. Without the eagle's shrieks, the darkness settles like velvet. punctuated only by wind and the occasional howl of a wolf. Prometheus, still bound, stares upward at the stars. They shimmer like countless sparks, each one reminding him of the fire he smuggled down to earth. In their flicker, he sees mortal camps and cities glowing far below. As if humanity has stolen pieces of the sky, he wonders if they know. Do shepherds warming hands by a flame still whisper his name? Do smiths hammering bronze remember the Titan who bled for their progress? Historians still argue whether Prometheus was ever worshipped as a formal deity. The archaeological record is thin, but some scattered inscriptions hint that at least a few mortals saw him. As more than myth, a rebel saint of invention, a quirky tidbit. Later Romans claimed Prometheus sculpted humanity out of clay before giving them fire. It's a mashup myth, but you can almost picture him like a tired potter, kneading muddy lumps into people, then thinking, well, they'll need warmth if they're going to survive my workmanship. Meanwhile, Zeus' unease sharpens. He knows mortals are thriving beyond expectation. Their cities grow brighter, their tools sharper, their ships faster. The king of gods once demanded awe. Now he receives obligation. There's a difference between genuine devotion and tax payments disguised as prayer. And even Zeus can tell the difference. Prometheus senses this shift too. The silence around him is not emptiness, it's a stage before a storm. He feels fate circling just as surely as the eagle once did. But instead of dread, there's anticipation. He imagines the crack of thunder not as punishment, but as a curtain rising on a new act. For now, he remains bound. The chains dig into his wrists, but they no longer define him. His identity is no longer the one the eagle devours. He is once again the firebringer, the rebel, the prophet. And as the night sky stretches endless above, he finds himself grinning faintly, because he knows, even if Zeus pretends otherwise, that the story is far from over. The centuries roll forward, though for Prometheus the rhythm burst chains, stars, seasons circling like a carousel with no off switch. Still, the absence of the eagle reshapes his inner world. Pain no longer hijacks every heartbeat. Now thought can stretch its legs. He contemplates, he remembers, he even plots. For a Titan long dismissed as a prisoner, that is no small revolution. From his rocky vantage, he watches mortals spread farther. Villages swell into cities, ships slice across the Aegean, marketplaces buzz like hives. The fire he gave them has multiplied into 1,000 users' hearths, forges, lamps, kilns. Historians still argue whether the Prometheus myth was less about literal flame, and more about symbolic fire, knowledge, skill, civilization itself. Either way, humanity now burns brighter than Zeus ever wanted. Prometheus chuckles at the irony. Zeus chained him here to prevent mortals from gaining too much. Yet their progress proves unstoppable. The king of gods can fling thunderbolts, but he can't roll back invention. Try banning fire once it's in 1,000 hearths. It's like trying to ban cat videos on the internet. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe traditions claim Prometheus whispered agriculture into mortals. Dreams, teaching them how to sow grain and bake bread. Imagine him chained on his rock, multitasking like a mythic Siri, dropping crop tips while an eagle pecks at his ribs. Zeus feels the pressure mounting. Prophecies echo in his ears. The union that will topple him, the child who may rise higher. He grows restless, pacing Olympus, picking fights with lesser gods just to vent his unease. The more humanity thrives, the more fragile his throne seems. As if fire itself smolders beneath its marble base. Prometheus, though bound, senses this imbalance. He leans into his scars like badges, proof that pain can't erase defiance. Each night he gazes at the constellations, tracing patterns with tired eyes, whispering to himself, the story is not finished. The stars flicker back like a chorus of tiny affirmations. And so he waits chained, but dreaming, scarred but laughing softly at the absurdity of divine control. The silence of the eagle has become his sanctuary, a breathing space where hope can finally stretch its wings. The longer Prometheus remains in this uneasy half-freedom, the more his identity shifts. No longer defined by the eagle's shadow, he becomes something quieter, almost meditative. You picture him with eyes half closed, murmuring to the mountain wind as if dictating lessons for mortals far below. Each gust carries fragments of memory. How he tricked Zeus with the ox bones, how he smuggled fire, how he endured centuries of tearing beaks. His suffering, oddly enough, becomes his syllabus. Down on earth, mortals thrive in ways that might make the gods nervous. Bronze edges into iron, ships hug coasts more daringly, and temples rise not only for Zeus, but for a menagerie of other deities. Historians still argue whether the diversification of worship reflected political shifts, local rulers wanting their own divine mascots, or simply human creativity refusing to settle for one tyrant in the clouds. A quirky tidbit in some late retellings. Mortals imagined Prometheus whispering jokes to them through firelight. These weren't just survival tips, but humor how to laugh at hardship, how to see absurdity in divine authority. It's almost like the Titan became an ancient stand-up comic, roasting Zeus from his rocky stage. Olympus, meanwhile, grows tense. Zeus broods, pacing with thunderbolt in hand. The prophecy is still unresolved, still buzzing like static in his skull. Every hero born makes him twitch. Every alliance, every marriage among gods and mortals feels like a potential trapdoor beneath his throne. He has the crown, yes, but the crown feels heavy, tilting with each rumor of defiance. Prometheus notices. Even chained, he feels the tremors of divine anxiety, and it amuses him. Zeus bound him to prevent mortals from overreaching, but their fires already stretch into horizons the gods cannot smother. Chains can hold a titan, but not an idea. The laughter of blacksmiths at midnight, the glow of lamps in city streets, the sparks from a sailor's torch, these are his children now. He rests against the stone, scarred wrists glowing faintly in moonlight. His punishment has become legend, and legend has become power. And though he still waits in iron cuffs, you can almost hear him whisper to himself, a sly grin tugging his lips. It won't be Zeus who has the last word. The mountain air grows colder with each passing century, but Prometheus hardly notices any more. His body has adapted to pain, then to silence, then to stillness. What remains is endurance, the kind that turns into myth itself. You can almost see him silhouetted against the stars, a permanent landmark as familiar as Orion or the Pleiades. Mortals tell their children that's where the Titan waits, and the story becomes as steady as the mountain it clings to. Down below, humanity burns brighter than ever. Fires light homes, workshops, and city streets. Knowledge spreads, slow at first on clay tablets, then faster as each generation sharpens tools and memories. Historians still argue whether myths like Prometheus acted as moral warnings, don't defy authority, or as secret encouragement, yes, rebel if it means progress. The contradiction makes sense. Every myth is a mirror, showing different faces depending on who's looking. A quirky tidbit: some late philosophers claimed Prometheus wasn't punished for stealing literal fire, but for gifting humans reason. Fire was just a metaphor, they said, for the spark of thought, which makes Zeus' punishment feel even more absurd, like grounding your kid. For learning algebra too quickly, Prometheus tilts his head back, watching the heavens. He knows Zeus still clutches his throne, thunderbolt gripped tight, paranoia dripping from his every decree. The prophecy hums like an echo, one union, one child, one downfall. Whether that day comes tomorrow or 1,000 years hence, Prometheus is content to wait. He has become the embodiment of patience sharpened into defiance, and now the story softens. The chains glimmer faintly under moonlight, no longer symbols of agony but of resilience. The eagle is gone, the silence remains, and the Titan's laughter lingers in the wind. You let your own breath fall into rhythm with that stillness, slow and steady, until the mountain itself feels like a lullaby. Because the truth of Prometheus isn't just in his suffering, it's in what he left behind. Every campfire, every glowing hearth, every flicker of invention is proof that his defiance outlived his punishment. Humanity carries his rebellion in its sparks, and those sparks keep spreading, long after the gods themselves fade into stories. And now, as the tale closes, let's let the words lengthen and soften, like shadows stretching at dusk. Picture the mountain quiet, the sky darkening, the stars pulsing gently above. The chains do not clank anymore, they simply rest. The The air drifts cool and light, brushing across your skin. The fire of man continues below. Steady and safe, warming families, glowing through windows. Marking time not with torment, but with peace. Let that image linger of a titan no longer screaming, of a world lit by countless small flames, of silence that is not empty, but whole. Your own breath can match the quiet now, each inhale slow, each exhale softer, until thoughts themselves flicker down like embers at the end of a fire. The story has been told. The mountain grows dim. The stars keep their vigil, and Prometheus waits, not with despair, but with calm. And you, too, can wait now, not for chains, not for eagles, not for thunder, but for rest. Let the world fade into stillness. Let the hum of night carry you, and drift as gently as smoke curling upward, dissolving into the sky. The story is finished now, and the mountain is quiet. The chains that once clattered are only faint lines in the dark. Prometheus rests against the stone, no eagle circling, no thunder rumbling, only the steady hush of the wind. You can let yourself drift into that same calm, breathing slowly. Matching the rhythm of the silent peaks, the fire of man still glows far below. Hearths flicker, lamps shine, forges hum, but here on the mountainside, none of it demands attention. You are simply watching from a safe distance, wrapped in the hush of night. Imagine those flames as tiny points of reassurance, far away, but always present. Like the stars overhead. Each inhale can feel like gathering warmth from those fires. Each exhale can feel like letting go of the weight you no longer need to carry. Little by little, your body eases, your thoughts untangle, and the edges of the day soften like fading embers. You don't need to chase the story anymore. Prometheus has found his stillness, and so can you. The mountain holds you steady, the sky shelters you, and the wind carries away anything sharp or restless. What remains is gentleness, the kind that lingers even as your eyes close. So let the silence expand. Let it cradle you the way night cradles the world. You are safe here, warm here, calm here. The last sparks of the tale flicker softly, then dissolve into nothing. And in that nothing, there is peace. Drift now as the mountain grows dim, as the stars hum quietly above, as your breath becomes the only sound you notice. The story is over. The fire burns on, and you can sleep.